Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Health Careers Cast, Episode 3. This is a series of podcasts where you can hear and learn more about different healthcare professions from professionals and students themselves. Today's speaker, we have a genetic counselor named Katie Caesar. Keep listening to hear more about what Katie does as a genetic counselor and how she got into the profession. Hi, Katie. Thank you for joining our Health Careers Cast to talk about your experiences. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself?
So my name is Katie. I am a genetic counselor. I graduated from the University of Waterloo in 2016 with my honors science degree. And from there, I did a 2-year master's degree in human genetics, graduated in 2018, and since then I've been working in the field. So still fairly new, but have a couple of years experience under my belt now.
Awesome. Well, what was your experience in Waterloo like?
It was great. I think that the program prepared me well for my master's degree. It was nice to be in a community that was very science driven, and yeah, overall I had a great experience there.
Awesome. Yeah. Were you in co-op or?
I wasn't, no,
Yeah.
just the
Cool.
4-year degree.
And so, as a genetic counselor, can you describe what you do at work typically?
Yeah, for sure. So genetic counselors have many different tasks, and it really depends on the specific role that you're in. Overall, I like to tell people that we help patients to use their genetic information to better their health care, and that can be in many different settings. We work in cancer clinics, we work in prenatal clinics, we work in pediatrics clinics. So in my role right now, I'm working with fertility patients. So they're usually coming in with some genetic testing results. And my job is to help them interpret those results. They're typically conditions that people have never heard of before, or inheritance patterns that need explaining as to how that may impact their health or their offspring's health. I collect a family history from the patients and identify any underlying genetic risk factors that need to be addressed, or recommend additional testing that might have not been completed already. So that's my main roles in the job that I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Before you started working in with fertility patients, are there any areas of work that you did before?
Yeah, so my first job was working in more of a cancer setting, and in pediatrics as well. So in that role, I was working in a hospital in Ontario. We were seeing patients that have a personal or family history of cancer and identifying if it was suggestive of a hereditary form of cancer. Talking to them if they meet criteria for that type of genetic testing, and kind of helping them walk through how that may impact their health and their family's health again. In the pediatric setting, it was more of talking to families who have a child with a suspected genetic disorder or a confirmed genetic disorder, and again, counseling them on what that means for the family, recurrence risks, how to help that child best based on their condition. So it was definitely a different role than what I'm doing right now, but still some overlap.
Awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of talking to people and also doing that testing. But is there any part where you do more like research and reading more articles, any type of research in your roles?
Yeah, so staying up to date on current literature in genetics is very important for a genetic counselor, just because it is such an emerging field of healthcare and just science overall. It's really important for us to always be reading, always be attending conferences, talking to colleagues, doing research. There's a lot of situations that we come across where we might have never seen that condition before, or you've never dealt with that specific type of family before, so you have to do your own research on how to best help them. So definitely always learning in that.
Awesome. Between those roles, do you have a favorite part, or like any exciting part of your work?
Yeah, I would say definitely learning new things all the time is a very exciting part of my job. I'm definitely never bored. There's situations where I get to talk to families with good news. There is some sad parts of the job where you're disclosing some sad news to families, but there's an equal part of good information that you're giving family, and I think it's exciting to be able to be a part of their journey in that way, and just helping people feel more informed. And it excites me when you receive the feedback that you've really helped them feel informed, and it's information that they feel like they can really use. I do like that about the job as well.
Awesome. And then are there any challenges? I know when informing people with bad news, that must be a challenge as well. But if there are any other challenges that you find in your work as well?
Yeah, definitely the emotional toll that any counseling job would have on a person. I think it's similar to probably like social workers or other people that are in roles where they're helping families who are in tough situations. So that can be a little bit draining at times. Definitely you need to be prepared for that. I think another challenge in the field as a whole is just lack of awareness of the genetics community. I know that when I was working in the hospital, we had very limited resources, limited funding. The wait time to see a genetic counselor in Canada can be 2 or 3 years sometimes, and which can be frustrating. So there's just not enough of us right now. And again, the awareness around it as a profession needs to grow. So that's definitely a challenge that especially genetic counselors in Canada, I would say, face right now.
Yeah, I think maybe personally, if I think about like health professions, I don't usually think about genetic counseling. How did you find out about it? What made you decide to become one?
So I actually didn't even know that it was a thing, which most people don't. Most people that I tell them what I do, they have no idea what it is. When I started at UW, I actually thought I was going to be a dentist. I just was okay at science in high school, and I knew that dentists make a lot of money, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm good at science, so I'll take science and I'll be a dentist. And then I just found that in the first couple of years of my undergrad, like I had no drive to connect with other people that were in pre-dentistry. I didn't really care to look up the program requirements. I just felt very overwhelmed with school and with life, and just thinking that it was just going to be really hard to get into school. And I think, like a lot of people who are headed towards maybe pre-med or things like that, you start to look at almost backup options or plan B options, just in case it didn't work out. Maybe there's something else similar or within healthcare that you might want to do. And I remember just Googling one day careers in genetics because I had gotten a good mark in my first year genetics class. And I came across this, and I had just never heard of it before. And it really just fascinated me that there was a career that was very science driven, but also very people driven at the same time. So I looked into it further and further and thought, well, this might just be a backup, keep it on the back burner for now. And then as I was looking into the program requirements, it was talking about whether, it's a good idea to shadow a genetic counselor for a day. So I did that. And I really just from there shifted gears and kind of ditched the dentistry idea and just thought this is something that I'm really going to enjoy working my life towards, rather than something that I just felt like I had to do.
That's awesome. So did you go through a lot of decision making when you were in undergrad, or were those two the main options?
Those two were definitely the main options. And I think, coming into undergrad, I had a very narrow mind. I just thought I was there to get it over with because I was going to be a dentist someday, and that's what you do. You just do your science degree. But I almost wish that I came into my undergrad degree a little bit more open-minded. Yes, I like science, and there's a million careers under that umbrella. So let's just do school for a couple of years and figure out what I'm good at and what I like. I wish I came in with that attitude rather than I'm just here to get it over with and move on to the next step. Because I think maybe I would have been introduced to this career earlier on in my undergraduate career rather than, only having the last couple of years to prepare for this grad school. So that is definitely one thing that I've thought about.
Yeah, I would relate to that as well. I think coming into my undergrad, I thought I wanted to become a doctor. And then just taking different opportunities, it kind of helped me become more open-minded. And because healthcare is so broad. So I think researching and speaking with people is really important. Yeah, thank you. What's one thing that you wish you had known before entering, becoming a genetic counselor?
Yeah, I think that when I was researching schools, I think before deciding that I wanted to be a genetic counselor, I wish I looked into that a little bit further as to where the schools were and things like that. We have very limited programs in Canada for genetic counseling. At this time, there's only 4 schools that I'm aware of that offer it, and they all only take a handful of students every year, so it is very competitive to get into. So I ended up going to the States for school, and there's a lot more spots open there, and they're for the most part willing to take on Canadian applicants, which is great. And in the end, I'm glad I went there. It worked out very nicely for me, and I'm happy with my decision. But I think I wasn't fully prepared to have to move away from home or even out of this, the country for school. And that's something I wish I would have looked into a little bit further, just because I didn't know how competitive the program was before, making that endeavor.
And because you got your degree in the States, so when you came back, what was that process like?
So it's pretty flexible, actually. Genetic counseling kind of has two, in North America, it's kind of one governing body. It's called the ABGC. So as long as you write your American kind of based exam, you can work in Canada as a certified genetic counselor. Canada also has its own exam that you can write, and then you can work in Canada, but that's not as recognized in the States. So if you ever wanted to work remotely for an American company, or you wanted to move to the States and work, they would want you to have the more North American wide one. So I came home, wrote that American-based exam, and it, the qualifications are the same as if I went to school in Canada.
Awesome.
So it's nice, yeah.
And for individuals who are looking to go in a similar path, and maybe becoming a genetic counselor, other than thinking about how competitive it is and researching those schools, is there anything that will be helpful for them to think about that would help with their applications and becoming a more competitive applicant?
It seems as though they're really looking for not only just marks, but also a lot of other things about a person that can take a couple of years to prepare. So marks are one thing, but they also want to make sure that you've shadowed maybe a couple of different genetic counselors, just to make sure that this is something that you know what a genetic counselor does, and you're comfortable performing those actions and learning how to do so. Also, community involvement. The genetic counseling community is very tight-knit with the disability community and advocacy groups for underserved populations. So being involved with those types of groups is helpful. They also typically look for some sort of counseling background, not that you have to be like a counselor, but they do find it helpful if you have some sort of like a hotline experience. So for example, I volunteered for the Sexual Assault Support Center hotline, where once a week I would just I would work that and talk to people over the telephone. But I know of people who have done similar roles for like the Mental Health Association or things like that. So those are all good things to be thinking about when you're in your undergrad and preparing for applying to genetic counseling programs afterwards.
Awesome. How did you get your experiences? What was your process like? How did you motivate yourself to get relevant experiences that you enjoyed doing?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I did when I decided this was the career path I was going to do is reach out to contacts at UW. So I really just sent kind of a broad email to a few of the biology professors that I had had in the past and just said, I'm looking to get some experience in genetics. Is there any laboratories on campus that are taking volunteer students or even paid students? And that got me associated with the embryology lab on campus for Dr. Bruce Reed. I did some work with him. Not that his work is directly genetic counseling work, but it's just kind of, it's genetics based. So that was helpful to get some lab experience. And then from there, I reached out to some genetic counselors in Ontario, one lady in Waterloo and a couple in Toronto. And they were very responsive and helpful. I think because the genetic counseling community is pretty small and we're very open to helping students, a lot of genetic counselors are willing to talk to students and have them shadow if they want to have a day in a clinic. So that was very helpful. And then from my shadowing experiences, just kind of asking those genetic counselors what they'd recommend. And, a lot of people had said, look into advocacy groups in the community. And that's how I kind of looked into the sexual assault support center. So it was just kind of one thing after the other. But definitely, I think the first step for me was reaching out to my science contacts at UW. And that was kind of the gateway that opened up to the other opportunities.
Awesome. That's the main thing that I've learned from these interviews is reaching out is so important. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And it can be hard to do at first because these professors are so, professional and experienced, and it can be intimidating to reach out to them. But I did find that the science professors that I had contact with at UW were very warm and open to helping with reference letters to get into school, and they're really there as resources to help you succeed, and I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome. That's great. Were there times where you felt demotivated in your undergrad, or when you were studying in the States, anytime during the process?
Yeah, I think there were times where I was just so ready to get out in the field and start working. An undergraduate degree can take a long time. It's 4, 5, or 6 or 7 years of your life that almost feels like it'll never end. And then the thought of applying for school all over again when you just did that to get into undergrad can be painstaking sometimes. So I think there was times where I was just ready to rush through the process and get into the working field. But looking back, it's we're pretty young a lot of the time when we start our undergraduate degrees, and I think having that time to mature and gain experience in the field and really learn from my classes was beneficial. So it was 6 years of straight school, but in the end, it's definitely worth it. And some days I wish I could go back to school.
Is there anything that you would change if you went back to school?
That's a good question. Sometimes I feel like I would have done a little bit more research on school options. Like I felt like I was very, as I mentioned, just kind of like rushed and ready to get going. So, I jumped on the opportunity to move to the States for school right away, but that wasn't really by choice. It was because the only school I got into was in New York, which is great. And again, I don't regret going there. I had a great experience there. But I sometimes wonder if I would have just slowed down for a year and maybe took a year or two save up some money and look into other school options if that would have changed. But yeah, that's overall I'm happy with how it worked out in the end anyways.
Yeah, awesome. What helped you feel more motivated through those times? Any particular activities that you were a part of? Anything that helped you?
Like in terms of during school or? Yeah, so I think it was difficult in undergrad because I really didn't know many other people. Maybe there was a couple other people in my program that were thinking of genetic counseling. Definitely when I was doing the genetic counseling program for 2 years, it was me and 30 other people that are on the exact same career path. So that was very motivating to be around people who are also looking for jobs. And some people wanted to move back home to Canada. Some people were from, KW, but I only met them because we moved to New York together. So that was very motivating to be around like-minded people. And I think back maybe to undergrad, if I would have made more of an effort to find other people in my community that were pre-genetic counseling, then that would have helped me to stay motivated during my undergrad as well. And I've actually thought before, it would be pretty cool if UW had some sort of a pre-genetic counseling club, just like they have pre-med clubs and things like that. So yeah, I've thought about that before as well.
Is there anything that you do outside of work? Any activities that you participate in outside of work? Not just currently, but also when you were in undergrad. How did you find time for yourself?
Yeah, so I, really I have a really good group of friends from high school that I'm still in touch with and hanging out with them, even throughout my undergrad, even though we weren't in the same school, all of us is something that I would do in my outside time. I used to enjoy traveling. Can't really do that right now, but just doing road trips on long weekends and stuff across the border is something that I would do for fun a lot of the time. I'm a runner the past couple of years. I like to run during my free time. So those I would say are my main things. My job that I have right now is a little bit more flexible since I'm working from home, which I have found has been nice for my work-life balance. I don't start until 10 in the morning now, and I work till 6 in the evening. So I've got a couple of good hours in the morning to do things that I enjoy. And now that I'm working from home, like lots of other people are, right when I'm done work in the evening, I can kind of de-stress instead of having a commute to and from work. So it's been a lot better of a work-life balance since I transitioned to this remote job for sure.
Awesome. How has the pandemic affected your work environment?
So luckily I transitioned to my remote job right before the pandemic happened, like back in December of 2019. So my job hasn't really changed too much. The company that I'm working for has always been in more of a remote setting. I do know that a lot of my colleagues that are still working in the hospitals in Ontario, it's it's definitely changed a lot for them. There was a couple of genetics clinics that completely closed down because it was deemed non-essential, and they were switched over to COVID screening in the hospital instead of genetic counseling, which I think just goes to show how adaptable genetic counselors are, and they'll work with what is put in front of them. So it hasn't changed too much for me right now, but I think that in Ontario and Canada, a lot of the hospital-based jobs are genetic counseling jobs are moving to a more remote setting as well. Once they can get past some of the privacy concerns when it comes to online counseling. But yeah, for myself, it hasn't really changed much since I was doing this before the pandemic.
Awesome. And last question, how do you take care of your own health and well-being whenever there are times when it's overwhelming? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think with a lot of healthcare professions, especially highly emotional ones like genetic counseling, it's important to have colleagues, whether they're in person or remote, who you can talk to about difficult cases or bounce ideas off of. Because of the nature of the work that we're doing, there are situations that can be very upsetting, and no one expects you to be able to soak that all in yourself. So a lot of what you learn in school is how to debrief with people and talk about how you're feeling. And I'm lucky that even though I'm working remotely right now and I can't go into somebody's office, I can talk to my colleagues over the phone and talk about how we're feeling about our days and difficult cases that we had, just to kind of get it off our chest. So definitely having good colleagues to do that with is a big thing.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to say to people who are interested in genetic counseling or just hearing about it first time? Any advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I would just say start to reach out to people within your UW community. As I mentioned, there's lots of professors that are there to help you out. Even though a lot of people haven't heard of genetic counseling before, I know that some of the professors have at UW and are very excited about it and willing to help you out. Try to get some research experience if you can. Definitely reach out to your community and start volunteering if you're able to. Reach out to genetic counselors in your area. I'm always happy to talk to students about their path and answer any further questions that they have, but start to make those connections as soon as you can, because it'll only benefit you going forward.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Yeah, awesome. All right, that's the end of the interview. There are more Healthcare Careers podcasts coming your way, so be sure to check them out. Thank you for listening.